Hi, good morning guys, it's Thursday. It's me, back at Stamford Hall. Just a little bit of housekeeping, because I can see that the camera's going in and out of focus again today. It's because we're down in the compost heap, which is down in the shade. All these videos I'm taking on my little Samsung work phone, which sometimes makes getting the details a little bit difficult, and we can't turn around and look at things. Also have to, being as we work on a military unit, have to be careful which way the camera's facing and make sure nothing's showing in the background that it shouldn't be. So that's a little bit of housekeeping on why the camera's a bit strange sometimes. So today we're down in the compost heaps. Probably one of my favourite bits of the garden, because I think if you've got a decent compost heap, your garden's never going to want for anything. I know a lot of people get very confused about compost and think it's some sort of alchemy or witchcraft as to how it works, but actually it's very, very simple, and all you need is two ingredients. One is nitrogen and the other is carbon. You've got sources of both of them in most gardens. Good carbon source is anything where you've been doing a little bit of pruning, a little bit of deadheading, little bits of weeding, small prunings. In fact, you can have larger prunings if you can put them through a little shredder and chip them up. So anything that's sort of brown and organic, even paper, torn up cardboard, stuff like that. Tea bags, coffee grounds, but not in too large a numbers. Anything like that. If you've got any animals, guinea pigs, hamsters, stuff like that, cleanings out from their cages can go in the compost heap, but you might have a problem with vermin, mice and rats and the like. And equally, you can put in sort of vegetable peelings and old bits of fruit and veg, but don't put anything that's been cooked in a compost heap, because you will end up with a rat problem, and that's not something anybody needs. So that's our carbon source. It's quite straightforward, really. And then our nitrogen source. Most of us have lawns in our gardens. I've just been around and picked this up where the guys have been doing a marvellous job of cutting the grass at Stamford Hall. So grass cuttings is a beautiful medium for rotting down into your compost. When you combine the two substances together, you will eventually end up with a really, really nice, friable sort of compost. This compost here has now been rotting down for about the last 8 months, and as you can see, that's just a mixture of green and brown waste. And it's been looked after in a certain way, and this is what we end up with. So how do we look after it? It's very simple. You construct yourself a compost heap. This one here is just made out of wooden pallets, all screwed together. We've got 3 pens here, so we've got one compost heap we're currently adding stuff into, one that's rotting, and one that's ready to be used. Due to operational reasons, we're not quite at that point yet. We have one that we've just started to use for this year. We've got the rotting down one, and the other one is currently vacant. So once you've got all your waste, what do you do with it? You can just get a bin, a compost bin from your local council, tip it all in and let it sit there. Chances are the nitrogen component will go all slimy and soggy, the carbon component will dry out and not do an awful lot, and you'll end up with this sort of soggy, sticky, horrible mess. I've even known compost heaps to get really, really hot and catch on fire. As I say, if you have the wrong ingredients in it, you can end up being overrun with rats and mice. So a few little things you do need to bear in mind. But basically, once you've got yourself an established heap, all you need to do is add layers of your carbon and your nitrogen. So quite simply, you would just get a layer of your grass and lay that into your compost heap, and then a layer of your green waste, and that would then go on top. You want it slightly in favour of the carbon material if you can, because the grass cuttings can really, really take over, and if you're not careful, they will go sort of soggy and smelly and horrible. So that's the basic method of producing compost. In theory, if you leave that there, all the microbes and the worms and bacteria and all the rest of it will come in, do their job, and you might end up with a halfway decent compost. This lovely compost in this heap here, which I've just shown you, has been turned probably 6 or 7 times by me, and it's the turning that actually activates it, is what gets it all going. And from horticultural therapy point of view, the turning it is a really good process for us. Obviously, we've got all the activities leading up to getting the materials, so we've been out deadheading, we've been using our hands, we've been weeding, we've been using our hands, we've been standing to weed, we've been cutting the grass, which means we've been using a lawnmower, which we can use as a really good sort of walking aid if we need to learn how to pace ourselves. So we've done all that good stuff to actually produce the materials. Then when we get it in the heap, a great form of exercise is to turn the compost heap. It's a straightforward occupation, but it uses an awful lot of upper body strength. It uses standing, and again it helps those follow instructions, because generally you will take the compost from one pen, turn it into the next one, and then let it continue like that. Because we haven't got a spare pen at the moment, literally all we're going to do is get into this compost heap here. We're going to get right down into the bottom of it. We're going to lift up all the stuff that's at the bottom, we're going to bring it to the top, which will then end up on top of our layer of grass and weeds that we put up from earlier on. And basically that is the action. So we're digging, we're using our arms, we're using our chest muscles, we're using all sorts of different muscles to actually get ourselves moving. So really it's a win-win situation. You can either use a simple fork for turning it, or I must admit I prefer to use a good old-fashioned shovel, and you can really get in and turn that heap, start getting oxygen into it, start getting some air into it, start getting all the microbes and the bacteria that are in the heap moving through the heap. In time you will end up with a lovely with worms inhabiting the heap, and they are obviously completely necessary in a compost heap, because it's them that's chewing up all the organic waste, excreting it out the other end, and that's basically what we're ending up with, is the beautiful compost. So if you need to do any upper body work, if you need to just, if you want to do a workout and you can't get to the gym or whatever, get out to your compost heap. Even if it's sat there for a long time, you can rejuvenate an old compost heap quite well, just by getting out and turning it, getting some air in it. If it looks a little bit dry, add some water to it. You're not going to do any harm to it at all. Obviously if it looks very wet, maybe think about adding a little bit more carbon rich material to it, or even if you've got like confidential documents or something like that which you've shredded up, those shreddings are a brilliant source of carbon, and they will mix in and they will just sweeten the compost up for you. And then, as I say, after about a sort of a minimum of 6 months, you'll end up with a heap where you've got this beautiful, lovely brown, friable, just gorgeous compost. So what have you got to lose? Give it a go. The compost that's in this pen I'm going to start spreading out on our raised beds behind us here. We're gradually swapping over to a no-dig system here now, so we're just going to lay the compost on top of the soil and let nature and the worms take their course and do all the hard work for us. Obviously that's a little bit counterintuitive for what we do in horticultural therapy, because it's making less steps, but we've got plenty of other things we can dig and work with. So that's a little bit of an introduction into compost for you. Hope it all made sense. You don't obviously need a wooden compost pens like we've got here. As I say, you can use plastic bins, but you still need the action of turning them. So I shall leave it here, guys. Get out in your gardens, do some digging, do some weeding, cut the grass, make yourself some lovely compost, and I will speak to you again on Monday. So take care, guys.